Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for the Chula Vista Council Candidates Forum for Districts 3 and 4. I'm Eric Collins, Vice President at the Institute for Public Strategies. It's my pleasure to join you this evening as the moderator for tonight's forum. At IPS, we have a vision for secure, healthy, vibrant communities where everyone can thrive. We work alongside communities to build power, challenge systems of inequity, protect health, and improve quality of life. I would now like to introduce the Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce CEO, Lisa Cohen. We are partnering with the Chamber tonight on tonight's forum. Lisa, how are you?
Good evening, Eric. Thank you so much. At this time, we'd like to have everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Please stand, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and committee members. My name is Lisa Cohen, and I am the CEO of the Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce and the Chula Vista Convention Visitors Bureau. Our Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce represents the business community in striving to preserve a working partnership of businesses and professional people that promotes, protects, and expands free enterprise system to enhance our members' ability to conduct their individual businesses successfully and to improve the economic stability of our community. Our chamber was established in 1927 and has continually assumed many roles from government relations, economic development planning, tourism, new resident information, and public relations in order to accomplish our goals of serving our business community. On behalf of my board of directors, I would like to thank our candidates for participating in this evening's forum. Thank you, Councilmember Steve Padilla, Henry Martinez for District 3 seat, and Councilmember Mike Diaz and Andrea Cardenas for District 4 seat. We also want to thank our partners, the Institute for Public Strategies and High Tech High Chula Vista and their students. Please vote on or before November 3rd, and thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Now I'd like to welcome Jovita Arellano. Jovita is the program manager for IPS South Bay. Jovita, welcome. And Jovita, I think we're going to need you to unmute your mic. There we go.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thanks, Eric. IPS South Bay has a long history of reducing the economic and social toll on by drugs and alcohol in Chula Vista and the other surrounding areas in the South Bay communities. We partner with residents, students, businesses, law enforcement, elected officials, and city leaders. We use an upstream approach to prevention that has applied in communities around the nation to remove systematic barriers and to advance safety, health, equity, and opportunities for everyone. Together, we address community trauma, we help reduce underage drinking, we help reduce blight in the city, and have begun the revitalization along the Chula Vista Broadway corridor. We also partner with local agencies to implement healthy food systems, and most importantly, we help create the power of change. Through our Chula Vista Advisory Group, we formed the Envision Broadway campaign and launched a survey back in December of 2019 that sought feedback from residents and visitors to Chula Vista, specifically on Broadway. We wanted to know their perception of the Broadway business corridor. Together with our partners, we are reimagining Broadway in order to balance business interests with community needs, while promoting public safety and economic vitality. To learn more about our work in Chula Vista, go to envisionbroadway.com. And thank you so much to the candidates for participating. Thank you, South Bay Youth for Change. Thank you, Lisa Cohen, the CEO for the Chula Vista Chamber, you and your partnerships with your board members. And thank you to the audience for your interest. Eric, back to you.
Thank you, Jovita. Again, this forum is being brought to you tonight by the Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce and the Institute for Public Strategies in conjunction with High Tech High Chula Vista, South Bay Youth for Change, and again, the Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce. So let's get to it. Our panelists are students, again, from High Tech High Chula Vista and South Bay Youth for Change. They are Parissa Vega and Montse Uribe. And now let's introduce our District 3 candidates. We have the incumbent, Steve Padilla, and the challenger, Henry A. Martinez. They will start each with 1 minute opening statements. Then the panelists, then we will alternate back and forth. Our panelists will ask questions to the candidates. We will alternate back and forth to keep it fair. The candidates will get 1 minute to answer each question. Again, 1 minute to answer each question. At the end of 1 minute, you will see your time has expired on our online timer, and that means your time is up. After the Q&A portion, candidates will then have 2 minutes for their closing statements. Now, the first half of the forum tonight will feature the candidates from District 3, and then the second half of the forum will feature the candidates from District 4. So now it's time for the candidates' opening statements, and we will start with Steve Padilla. Mr. Padilla?
Thanks very much to the sponsors, to IPS, to the Chamber, from our participating students for plugging in the community, giving us an opportunity to have this conversation. It's been the honor of my adult life to give most of my adult life to serving the community where I grew up and learned the lessons of life. We are facing a most extraordinary time, probably unique and challenging in a way that we've never ever faced in this community before. And I just respectfully believe that this is a time where we need seasoned, experienced leadership that has relationships with leaders all over the region at the state and federal level, and can help move this community through this very, very challenging time, whether that's working hand in hand with small businesses and local businesses to keep them afloat, whether that's empowering our community, particularly the way in which we've been hit in an uneven manner with the coronavirus. I know personally, because I'm a survivor, and making sure that the distribution of information which empowers our community and assets and resources is one that's done in an equitable and just way, not just given an equal share all over the region, but putting money where it's going to matter most, to continue doing that work in this community. And I believe this is a time for leadership that has bipartisan support. I'm the candidate seeking re-election in this race that has support from Democrats and Republicans and independents, from the business community to the labor movement.
And we're running over the time there, Mr. Padilla, but thank you again for your opening statement.
Thank you. I didn't see a timer, by the way. Is one going to pop up in front of us or no?
We did have one there, another one. If you see it there on your screen.
Do not.
Okay, I will. Do you see the timer, Mr. Martinez? Okay. We will make sure that you do see that timer, but I will, when the 1 minute's up, I will remind you if you don't see it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
And Mr. Martinez, your opening statement.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Why am I running for city council? Is because we need a representative that is loyal, dedicated to our Chula Vista District 3 100%, like myself. My name is Henry Martinez. I live in Chula Vista for almost 17 years. I have 2 beautiful children in Chula Vista and the one graduate in San Diego State University. I am the only homeowner running for Chula Vista City Council District 3. I've been married, very proudly married for 28 years. Years of dedication with my wife and my family raised in Chula Vista District 3. I will be 100% dedicated to the position. Not like the incumbent sharing his time with other collateral duties. I know he's trying to work hard for the district, but I will work harder for everybody else. I will pledge to Chula Vista residents and proudly serve them like I did for 32 years in the Navy. Please vote for Henry Martinez because I'll be dedicated for you for the next 4 years. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Martinez. A reminder to the candidates that this is not a debate. There will be no rebuttals, and we will be enforcing that 1 minute rule for your responses. I want to let everyone know that the candidates have not been provided these questions in advance. They are hearing them tonight for the very first time. The questions from the audience were submitted prior to this evening, so there will be no live questions from the audience tonight. Our student panelists have prepared 4 questions of their own, and then Lisa Cohen from the Chamber of Commerce will ask the first 3 questions. So Lisa, I am going to pass that baton to you for those first 3 questions, and I would just ask you, whoever you choose to go first, make sure that the individual that goes second would then answer the first question. We'll start first on the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. The first question is for Council Member Steve Padilla. Do you support or oppose Proposition 15, which would require commercial and industrial properties be taxed based on their market value instead of their purchase price?
I do. And I think that the conversation's timing is another debate. It's maybe something that the timing is off because of the great crisis that we face. But let's be realistic. If you look closely at the language in Prop 15, it actually lowers taxes for most medium and small businesses and commercial property owners. It raises those taxes on, closes that loophole, making them pay their fair share for those that have assets well north of $3 million. We've had a long history in California of underfunding and failing to match on a per capita basis our investment in education in this state, even with the lottery and even with other bond measures. We've done it in an ad hoc patchwork fashion. And it really hasn't been smart because even though we're the largest state by population in the US, we're one of the lowest in terms of how much we fund our education system on a per capita basis. Do you ever look around you and wonder why local communities and school districts are always passing bonds to provide classroom materials or to build schools? Why are local communities always doing their own bonds? I'll tell you why. It's because we failed to keep pace with the needs in this state to really invest in the things that we need to invest in to build the future. If you look,
thank you, Mr. Padilla. We're going to have to cut you off there. The timer has expired, but thank you. And your opportunity now to answer that question, Mr. Martinez.
Good evening. Thank you, sir. Prop 15, I'm totally opposed. I oppose tax on commercial and industrial increasing funding source for public schools, colleges, and local government services by changing tax assessment of the commercial and industrial property. This is an attack on Proposition 13, to let you know that would protect us in the property taxes. The state needs to be held accountable to manage our state taxes, our funds, hold them accountable before they ask for more taxes from our constituents, even myself. If Prop 15 passes, I'll tell you one thing, you'll have and it's going to be the world, should I say, California's biggest historical tax increase in history. So that happens, you're going to see the biggest exodus of companies leaving to Texas, Nevada, and Arizona, which already happened. It's already happening now. We are trying to survive during this crisis, and the NAWCP opposes it. So no on Prop 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Lisa?
Question number 2, I'll start with Henry. What unique qualifications set you apart from your opponent?
Well, I have 32 years of military service. That's what I could say. I've started at 17. I have executive level leadership. I have experience with foreign countries and dignitaries. I've been in top secret level clearances that I've done. I've been in various campaigns in reference to the military war. I have a master's degree in joint operations that could apply towards our current city operations. I love the pillars to make sure we support our police force, first responders, our firefighters, especially our public works, our staff. Without the public works, nothing's going to work in Chula Vista. So using my network leverage, my experience with different types of communities, make sure that we bring people together, not apart. Use my military service plus my 15 years of community service here in Chula Vista, bringing our community together. That's what I bring to the table, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. And Lisa, your final question.
Question number 3, this is for Council Member Steve Padilla. Do you support any type of tax or business fee increase in the wake of COVID pandemic?
I think we've tried very hard to do the opposite, working together, making sure that we're making grant funding available for our small businesses to cover losses, to plug them in to assets and resources that will allow them to continue to operate, to waive fees for them to move their operations, whether that be retail or food and beverage, out into public right-of-ways, on our sidewalks and our streets, so they could maintain some capacity and ability to continue to operate, to provide PPE, not just to our first responders, but to many of our small businesses, as well as information that would empower them to be able to continue to work safely. So I don't think that what we've been doing in terms of supporting business during COVID is to try to work with them, address their needs, waive fees, not increase fees, and make their path easier to continue to operate in a way, because they're the lifeblood of our community.
And it did want to give you the opportunity, Steve, to answer question 2. I don't think that you have that opportunity. So the question is, what unique qualifications set you apart from your opponent?
Well, every candidate brings something different. I think what sets me apart is the breadth and depth of my experience across sectors. I've worked in government and legislation policy making for nearly 25 years in this community at the local, regional, state, and worked on public policy even at the federal level with the Council on Foreign Relations. I have a unique set of experiences, having worked at the Port of San Diego as our commissioner representing Chula Vista, in statewide office on the California Coastal Commission, serving 2 terms on the council and serving as mayor. My experience with this city government and this community's issues and needs is unsurpassed by anyone in this race. My background is in law and public policy, and I served proudly for 13 years in law enforcement, both working on regional task force and working in local departments and dealing with domestic violence and child abuse. I went into the police academy before I went to college or law school. So I think that my connection to this community and my depth and breadth of my experience is very, very unique in this race and well suited.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. And Lisa, I think we have one more question for Mr. Martinez.
Yes. Do you support any type of tax or business fee increase in the wake of the COVID pandemic?
No, ma'am, I do not support any increase to any local business here in Chula Vista or small business in Chula Vista. We need to make sure that we waive all fees and help them promote and then recover from the current COVID-19 crisis. As we already know, it's a crazy era for everybody, on a new frontier on how to do business now with the COVID-19 crisis. PPE during the COVID-19, the month of February till now, I've been part of it, created a COVID-19 crisis team, task force in Chula Vista, all by neighbors and friends and strangers, and that we were able to support and help our local nurses, hospitals, and constituents here that needed the needs of food, products, the elderly, make sure they had the correct medication, stuff like that. But no, to answer your question, do not support any increases of taxes, ma'am.
Thank you. That concludes our 3 questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Now we will have our students from South Bay Youth for Change ask 4 questions of their own, and then they will also ask 6 questions that have been submitted in advance from the audience. So let's start with you, Monse, with your first question, and let's start with Mr. Padilla for that question.
Question number 1. How will you work to continue protecting youth from access to marijuana in both West and East Chula Vista?
Thank you, Monse. When we decided to set up a system where we would allow commercial use, meant that the city would take control over who was operating within our city's borders, not leaving it underground to the black market, but allowing a legitimate market that we would license and we would regulate and we would oversee the quality control of the product and the people who were selling it. And we were more able to enforce who has access, particularly youth, which is an important issue. We're much more able to do that when we set up a scheme where the city has the ability not only to regulate and control and oversee, but also the money and the resources to enforce. When you leave the whole market underground, you give the dominant folks that are on the street selling product are people that you don't know what you're getting, and it's a safety risk, and you can't enforce it as easily when you're licensing it. So that is the approach we've taken. We will continue to do that in a way that decriminalizes it and gives us a lot more local power and control over our own destiny.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. The same question now for you, Mr. Martinez.
If you don't mind, can you repeat the question, please?
Of course. How will you work to continue protecting youth from access to marijuana in both West and East Chula Vista?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for that good question. I totally oppose about the marketplace, the marijuana marketplace, but the city passed it and we have to go and jump on the bandwagon. And how do we deal with it? How do I protect my future? Because in other cities and states are having issues with your educational level going down, your school scores going down. So education, enforcement, and regulation, just like Mr. Padilla said, that the current city council has done a tremendous job in making sure that they have strict guidance, follow strict rules, and continue forth with that. I'll make sure they would enforce that all the money's made from that to continue to provide education and some kind of treatment for youth to protect them in case they're become addicted to the drug itself. So that's the fallback negative part of having marijuana marketplace in our city. I totally get it, but we have to move forward, and how do we use it? So that's how I protect my future, protect you, ma'am.
And thank you, Mr. Martinez. Now, Parisa, we will start with you. Your first question, and please direct that first question first to Mr. Martinez.
How have you responded to the COVID-19 pandemic? Please share how you will make sure regulations are enforced, like mandatory masks, and your thoughts about schools reopening for in-classroom teaching and learning.
That's a choice, right? For our parents, our families, and of course, our students. We have to protect our students, our family, and then of course, our residents here in Chula Vista. This pandemic is dangerous, right? It's out there and killing people. But we have to make sure we follow the PPEs correctly, make sure the schools are following the PPEs. Of course, there's students out there and parents that are totally against of the PPE and move forward. So those are the choices you have. So how does the school, we don't have any control, but how does the school protect the kids? Well, I guess in reference to the ones that do not want to attend and provide online training, but reinforcement of hand sanitizers, PPE, make sure everything's sanitized prior to. So you have to be strict. It's kind of hard for young kids to restrict and maintain their 6 feet, but we have to be due diligent and strict on taking care of our youth at school.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Padilla.
Thank you. We need to set the right example by acknowledging that science and medicine and experts in that field have to drive how we handle this. And that means listening to them and empowering our community. You know, if you take just the city of Chula Vista and South Bay, and you look at our rates of infection and transmission and hospitalization alone, we're already in the purple zone. I'll say that again, we're already in the purple zone, okay? So what does that mean? That means our community is disproportionately affected. That means we do have to be prepared to continue to give the right information based in science to our community and prepared to make the hard choices to set the right example and to enforce what we need to enforce across the board so that we save lives. This isn't just about freedom or a choice to practice safe practices or not. This is about whether we care for one another in this incredible time, because we can literally infect someone else and kill them without even knowing it. And that's no joke. And we have to believe in the science and follow the science.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Montse, I will have you now ask the third question. Please start with Mr. Padilla.
How will you address police brutality and police reform?
I think that we have to acknowledge that we have to have a tough conversation in our country, in our community. I'm an ex-law enforcement guy, and I support the amazing men and women, by and large, who wear that uniform and work hard, of every color, of every description and background that try. But we have to acknowledge systemic racism and a culture of privilege that isn't in touch with that privilege. We have to work in partnership with our police department. We're very lucky here in Chula Vista. Our community gives our police department locally some of the best ratings of any in the state. I mean, very high approval, but we can always do better. And we have to do better by really acknowledging some of these difficult topics. So we have to have conversations about better oversight. We have to have conversations about the quality of training and screening and the caliber of people that we allow to become Chula Vista police officers. And we also have a conversation about what we're putting on their shoulders and what we're expecting them to do, and whether that is really the smart way to go forward. So we need to have that conversation, and I'm happy to help lead that.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Same question for you, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you very much. I'm telling you one thing, our police force are our first line of defense. We cannot afford any losses of police force. We have to make sure that any bad apples within the police force are taken care of immediately. I do not condone any type of abuse or abuse of power. So that's where we have to make sure that we take a climate of our current situation in Chula Vista, and thank God that Chula Vista loves our police force love our residents, and we protect one another. That's why we hadn't seen any big major riots, all peaceful protests, and the city of Chula Vista set the example for all others to follow. But yet, we can't be complacent, but we have to make sure we set the climate correctly, make sure we adjust training and education, and make the correct actions needed. No abuse of power is condoned within my stature and my beliefs. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. This brings us to our final question from the students tonight. And Parisa, I will have you start with that question for Mr. Martinez first. Thank you.
What can you do as a city council member to help families find financial support during the pandemic and make housing more affordable in Chula Vista?
Well, Chula Vista here in the District 3 area, lots of land available, right? And there's already, the city of Chula Vista already passed the requirements before they get fined for Section 8 housing. So one, we had to make sure that we provide education and information to all residents that are applying for Section 8 or apartments or housing at the federal, state, and local level to apply for all programs to allow them to qualify to either rent or buy a purchase right of a home. I'm all about living the American dream. How you do that is helping our residents make sure that they have current jobs to afford that dream, to support that dream, bring in high-tech jobs as well, and then educate our people to see where they at and they fall for budgeting and apply for that program. Thank you very much, ma'am.
And Mr. Padilla?
We have to continue our long practice of demanding inclusionary housing. When developers build a number of units, they have to include a certain number of them that are designed for low and moderate income families. We have to continue to incentivize our nonprofit partners and participate with public leveraging of bonding and capacity and funds to help allow nonprofit builders to build more stock and affordable housing. We have to abide by the statewide laws that have been passed with respect to regulation and oversight to keep things affordable. I mean, too high a percentage of our folks throughout this region, and particularly South County, work more than one job and can't meet their basic housing and transportation needs. That should be unacceptable to all of us. Chula Vista has been a leader, and I have been part of that, in not just demanding that we have production of product here and availability and programs to plug residents into, not just to qualify for affordable housing, but how they might someday move and transition from into ownership someday. So we need to continue that path of doing our share and more of providing affordable housing.
And thank you, Mr. Padilla. That concludes our questions from students from High Tech High, Chula Vista, and South Bay Youth for Change. But Montse and Parisa will remain with us. And now we will begin on the 6 questions that were submitted by residents and voters in the city of Chula Vista. We will start with you, Montse, and please direct your first question to Mr. Padilla.
How will you ensure us that the new Chula Vista Bayfront project will hire local residents?
That has been my baby for nearly 20 years, and I've been very intimately involved in that. That plan that is now going to be built out was a result of throwing out everything we'd done before and starting over when I served as your mayor. And that plan is the plan that was developed on my watch and during my administration. And we brought a massive, unheard of coalition together. And one of the things that we did with respect to what will be built on that bayfront is made sure that the folks that are our partners in building and producing that whole transformation already have concluded agreements to be able to be sure that they give local hire and that they give community benefits, and that folks that are building and operating and holding those jobs come from within our community, and that our community benefits, not just the builders and entrepreneurs, but our residents benefit from the transformation of our bayfront.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Mr. Martinez, your response?
I'll just make sure that we do a climate control of the company and within the Bayfront area. Make sure we do an inventory of how many people, residents, are actually from Chula Vista that are being hired. One thing that would should I say, not hire people from Chula Vista is because of the prerequisites or the skill sets needed. Right. So how do we make sure that the skill sets are available for the Bayfront to hire within local Chula Vista? We got to make sure that the requirements and skill sets and job place posting is available now, so people could get ready if they're not qualified for that job position, right, within the Bayfront. And then to include that, we make sure that our high tech high students have an opportunity to apply towards the Bayfront because of their high technical skills and skill sets it could bring forth that Bayfront could hire. So I would make sure I condone and promote that hire within, and ensure that Bayfront does it due diligence to do what it promised to do to hire within Chula Vista. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. We will now go to our second question from the audience. And Parisa, will you please direct that question first to Mr. Martinez?
Residents are being evicted even though there is a ban on eviction. What will you do to prevent us from being on the streets?
I am so happy that you asked that question, and because it's a hot topic here in Chula Vista, especially in our area in District 3, as Mr. Padilla would know. For renters, we have to make sure that Chula Vista has the state, federal, and local entities to provide the funding to help support, provide some kind of relief, but the agreement has to come from the owner and the renter to make sure that we have a settlement agreement to make sure they pay their rent on time. And if not, how can we extend the rental agreement until the jobs and COVID-19 is eradicated? We have to make sure that we follow those guidelines and help and use the federal and state programs to help our local Chula Vista residents to stay in Chula Vista, to able to pay their rent in Chula Vista, and in Chula Vista, the city funds whatever is available with local entities and nonprofit organizations to help out.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Padilla?
We have to protect the most vulnerable among us in this very difficult time. And oftentimes, many of our residents who are renters as well are the most vulnerable and can't absorb this loss. And we don't want to increase the people that are out and unhoused. We created our own ordinance for many months under emergency provisions to prevent evictions, both residential and commercial. So even to protect small businesses from their property owners taking advantage of that, and that meant jobs. The state, as you well know, has enacted a program that remains in effect into the first quarter of next year. And so one of the things I think that we can do as a city government is continue to provide access to information across language and cultural barriers so that people understand what their rights are under this existing extension and what the process is if they're affected by COVID, and how they can defer rent and how they can work with their landlord to be able to carry them forward during this really tough time.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Now we move on to the third question from our audience. And Montse, I will have you ask that question to Mr. Padilla first.
What resources would you provide for veterans?
I've had a long history of working with our resident community of veterans. I was on the city council that negotiated the deal with the state and our local school district that allowed the veterans home to come into existence. And throughout its existence in the first place, which is unique and one of many in the state. And throughout my tenure in office, I've also worked directly with the Department of Veterans Affairs and with the Veterans Home and with veteran advocates and groups throughout our region and locally to address needs and issues when they came up for housing and for access to services. Our veterans give so much and they're so worthy. I was born a Marine Corps brat. I happen to serve in a different uniform, but so many of our residents serve our country, and they sometimes have unique needs because of their service. And so we always have to continue to be prepared to do our part as a local government to partner with regional and state agencies to address their needs and to make sure we're getting our share of those resources here, whether it's our veterans home or anywhere else.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Mr. Martinez?
Thank you very much. As a veteran, I do understand the needs that our true veterans here in Chula Vista need. I know that on 8th Street, they recently opened a nice, beautiful little clinic to service our local Chula Vista residents. But I would advocate to bring in more services instead of a psychiatric hospital here in District 1 that's proposed to be building pretty soon. I would try to convey and convince to change that idea to a VA medical hospital, not just to service VA people, but to service our people in need in Chula Vista, to provide equal opportunity health to all. How is that going to work, right? So we have to propose and bring entities together, use all the state and federal bonds and grants that allow us to use, and then leverage the Veterans Affairs Affairs Department to see how can they bring that entity to life and for real and bring it to life. VA hospital in Chula Vista.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. We now move on to our fifth question. That question will go to Mr. Martinez first, and Montse will be asking that question.
Broadway has several vacant businesses that are constantly being vandalized. What will you do to fill those vacancies with lucrative businesses that will benefit our community?
Yes, ma'am. Broadway is our heart, our breadwinner for Chula Vista, our main line of artery of business in Chula Vista and the historical. We have to make sure that we advertise opportunities for community, for businesses, small businesses to come and attract them and provide some kind of incentives, but not provide so much incentives that you give up most of your taxes, right? So let's go 50-50, meet us halfway and provide some proposals, grants to allow them to promote and fill in Chula Vista. And of course, with that, especially when the marijuana market, how do we use that money to increase police force at 106 police force members that we need? So that's what help prevent vandalism. Then of course, then make it more of a smart city section where you could use cameras to surveil and surveillance our areas to protect them. That's how I would bring businesses back to San Diego, Chula Vista, Broadway, and I love Chula Vista.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Padilla?
We have to improve our infrastructure, work in closer partnership with our school districts to make sure that they're offering quality and not scandal. We have to make sure that we're taking advantage of the fact that we sit on the Pacific Rim in the middle of the Cali-Baja binational region with a highly trained workforce. Businesses aren't going to come and locate in our community until they know there's good transportation infrastructure, until there's a breadth of housing. What does that mean? That means there's everything from people starting out in very affordable housing on up to ownership of every level. That means that there's people living and working on the west side that have the disposable income eventually to spend a little money to go out and spend it in a store, because those businesses aren't going to survive if there isn't a local market, and they're not going to survive or exist if people aren't going to want to come and invest in Chula Vista in the first place. So it's always about understanding what are the things we have to offer as a community, how do we set the table for them, and how do we entice them to come by continuing to grow our housing stock and market, improve our workforce, and improve our infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. This brings us to our final question from the audience, and I will have Parisa ask that question first to Mr. Padilla.
When you hear about something that concerns you in the city, what steps would you take to see that this concern is resolved?
Well, no one does it alone. First, I'm grateful to have an amazing staff and partnership, and I have many great partners in my district and community, whether that's residents, constituents. I know where to find them, and they know where to find me, and they often do. And so I hear from constituents in our district about what the issues are, or what the question is, and what we need to do is, what my practice has always been is to have my staff react to that as quickly as possible, gather all the information, find out what's really going on, deal with it personally if I can, if it's something I can resolve. If not, making sure that we're plugging them into the proper resources. Sometimes it's not even a city resource. Sometimes constituents will call me or my office and ask about something that really is in the purview of the federal government or the county or somebody else. But then you can be an ombudsman, right? You can shepherd them through that process and plug them in to the resources that they need. So that's what you need to continue to do. I do miss, because of COVID, not doing my coffees every quarter in person, but I'm looking forward to the day we can do that again.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Mr. Martinez?
Thank you very much. Even though I'm not a city councilman and working hard for our community, I make sure that I listen to the voices of our constituents. Like in Veterans Park, vandalism is happening. Like I walk my areas, and of course, the areas of Brand New on Heritage Park, then areas of people are concerned about the methane concerns and issues. How do we address those, especially with the Chula Vista recycling dump site we have and the smells, right? People would have access to Henry Martinez. I would make sure there was town hall meetings, phone calls. My phone number is published, as everybody knows. My number is publicly published, and people have tested my number, and they know that I have access to Henry Martinez, because Henry Martinez will answer that phone and follow through and follow up. Follow up is key. If you don't follow up, then fire and forget, you'll get nothing done. But you gain the trust when you follow up on your residents.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. That concludes our questions from the students and the audience tonight. Thank you again, Parisa and Montse, South Bay Youth for Change, and High Tech High Chula Vista for those excellent questions. This now brings us to the closing statements. And since we started with Mr. Padilla And the opening statements, we will now have Mr. Martinez start with his closing statements, and you have 2 minutes, Mr. Martinez.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Why am I running for city council is because we need a representative that is loyal and dedicated to our Chula Vista District 3. My name is Henry Martinez. Of course, I will be 100 dedicated to the position, not like the incumbent sharing his time with other collateral duties. I know he's trying to do his part in helping out Chula Vista, but we voted him to be our city councilman. I will pledge to Chula Vista residents and probably serve them just like I did for 32 years in the Navy to our country. I'll be dedicated to Chula Vista 100%. I will only focus on the Chula Vista District 3 position and help fight and create high-paying jobs, fix our company infrastructures, protect our family values, and keep our community safe and bring our community together with love, not being divided. I will maintain a perfect attendance at the city council Chula Vista meetings. I have no intentions to run for any political positions because I am 100% dedicated to you. I will remain dedicated to Chula Vista. I'm the co-founder of Honor of Veterans Parade for 15 years. And Chula Vista, please vote for the right person, Henry Martinez, that cares about you, and you'll have access. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Padilla, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you again to all the sponsors and particularly to the students from high tech that participated. That always warms my heart because they're the future and I love that when they're getting engaged. My family has been in this part of the region for almost a century. I've given my entire adult life to serving this community in many capacities and would like to think that I've had a hand in many of the different exciting things that are moving this community forward. It's been the honor of my adult life. And I think my record of accomplishment, of coalition building, of building broad coalitions, of bipartisan coalitions, of support speak for themselves. Since I returned to office, we've enhanced our staffing for police and firefighters at levels never before seen in any 4-year period of any recent city council in city history. I have been a lead architect in bringing 7,000 new jobs to our Bayfront with the Bayfront project. And my role in San Diego Community Power as its vice chairman means we're going to bring affordable power and reduce carbon emissions and get our power from renewable sources. And that's good for our city. And I'm there because I am a city councilman, because it's required to be a councilman from Chula Vista. When I defend our coast and access to our coast as chairman of the California Coastal Commission, I'm there because I'm a city councilman by law. And the position I hold is supposed to be a local elected official. So those extracurricular activities are not, they're part of the job. And they're part of the job of protecting this community. As I seek re-election, I'm the councilman sitting here with the support of Mary Salas, our mayor, the support of the Chula Vista Police Officers Association and firefighters, the League of Conservation Voters, and our business community. The coalition of support around my candidacy is unsurpassed and unique. I'm happy and honored to have served you for the last 4 years, and I'm would be very honored to continue working with you into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez and Mr. Padilla. We really appreciate you being with us tonight. We are now going to, and good luck on Election Day. We will now move to the District 4 candidates. They are incumbent Mike Diaz and the challenger Andrea Cardenas. Each one will have 1 minute for their opening statements. And we will now begin with Ms. Cardenas. If we could bring, there's Andrea. Hello, Andrea. Welcome.
Hello.
We'll start with your opening statement, please, and you have 1 minute.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Cardenas, and I'm a candidate for Chula Vista City Council in District 4. I'm a lifelong Chula Vista resident. I attended Castle Park and Otay Elementary and graduated from Hilltop High School. Southwest Chula Vista was the place where my parents purchased their first home when they came here from Tijuana. This is also where they lost their home when I was very young. My father became very ill, which forced him to stop working. And even though they tried and they did a lot of attempts to provide for me and my siblings, for many years we did face housing and food insecurity. Nevertheless, my community always provided a home for me and a place for me to grow and learn. I learned how to swim at Loma Verde Pool, checked out my first Harry Potter book from the South Branch Library on Orange Avenue. To this day, the problem is that many people in my district are still battling housing and food insecurity. Parents are concerned about being able to pay the rent and children are going hungry to bed. I'm running for city council because while I recognize that my upbringing and the struggles of my family are not unique to me, from an early age, I was given the opportunity to learn about civic and community engagement. What started for me as youth activism when I was...
Yeah, the time is
Oh,
up.
sorry. Sorry about that.
And thank you so much, Ms. Cardenas. We'll now go to the incumbent, Councilmember Mike Diaz.
Hello, hey, I'm a retired firefighter Mike Diaz, and I'm your council member representing Southwest Chula Vista. And first, I want to thank IPS, the students, the Chamber of Commerce for making this forum happen. What you're going to hear today are all the great things that I've done for your neighborhood over the last 4 years, serving as your council member. And I'm going to tell you even more about that in the closing statements if I don't have an opportunity to mention those during the questions. So I was born in Mexico and moved to Chula Vista, where my parents and my brothers and sister all lived. And we went to all the Castle Park campuses here in Chula Vista, the elementary, junior high, and high school. I married my high school sweetheart and then became a U.S. citizen. And then after that, I became a firefighter for the city of Escondido and worked as a firefighter for over 30 years. And I retired in 2011. And after retirement, I went to work for Sweetwater High School, where they asked me to teach minority students how to become firefighters. And that was a great privilege for me to do that. Thank you.
And Mr. Diaz, we're done with the opening statement. Thank you so much. We will be following the same format as we did with our District 3 candidates. So now let's go to Lisa Cohen, CEO of the Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce. Lisa has 3 questions that she would like to ask the candidates. And Lisa, let's start with Ms. Cardenas.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Do you support or oppose Proposition 15, which would require commercial and industrial properties be taxed based on their market value instead of their purchase price?
I support Prop 15. I think we absolutely need to demand that everyone is paying their fair share of taxes. The opposition to this proposition is trying to place fear in our small business community and in our just residents by saying, you know, you're going to be paying more in taxes and whatnot. But the reality is that it's not fair that for I don't know how many years we've had small mom and pop shops that are paying the same and sometimes even more than big corporations like Disneyland and Universal Studios. And so I think right now it's so incredibly important that we're bringing back resources to our community, many of whom are facing so much disparities and amplified now because of COVID. So I absolutely support Proposition 15. I think this is the right time to invest in our schools, in our neighborhoods, and in our community. So absolutely in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you. I totally oppose it. It is the wrong time to do it. In fact, even Councilmember Padilla, who supports her, says that. And keep in mind, this here is going to cripple the economy in California, in my view. I go to where I get my hair done and my dry cleaning. It's a strip mall. There's 8 businesses there. I did the math. I looked it up and looked at the value of that facility. That if we enacted Prop 15, it would raise their rents $200 to $300 a month. And keep in mind, even Councilmember or Mayor Salas brought in a fellow from Harvard, and they said that the typical small business in West Chula Vista has annual receipts of $200,000. Think about that. Any small increase right now in their bottom line is going to cripple businesses. And that same Irene Liu, who's the fellow from Harvard, also told us that over 90% of our businesses in Chula Vista are small people. That's why Councilmember Mike Diaz is supported by folks from all different areas because I support our hardworking people in Chula Vista.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Lisa, second question, and please start with Mr. Diaz first.
Yes. What unique qualifications set you apart from your opponent?
Well, I think what those qualifications are is number one, I have support from both sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, Independent, you name it. And the reason for that, and people have learned about Mike Diaz and who Mike Diaz is, and that I have an open mind and I open my heart to listen to new ideas and accept those. And folks have that's why I have that support. So I think the number one thing you need is a council member that is willing to listen to everybody and put all those ideas together and do good for the community. And I've done a lot of different things in our neighborhoods, whether it's Conley Park, Harborside, where I've gotten together with groups from all different sectors of the community, and I've done a lot of great good. So that's the number one thing. And also just my background is being a firefighter for 20 years, working at the state level, creating public safety bills that have kept you and me safe.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. And Lisa, your final question. And please start with Mr. Diaz. Or actually, Ms. Cardenas, sorry.
No problem.
Didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry about that.
No worries. For the past 15 years of my life, I have been heavily involved in community activism and engagement. And that turned into an opportunity to later work with several nonprofits, working on grants and making sure that we're providing programming that is essential and critical for our lower income communities. In addition to that, I worked for several years under Mayor Faulkner in the city of San Diego, doing as a community representative and working on binational affairs. So I believe that collection of different experience, the understanding that while I am a Democrat, but I was able to work efficiently with a Republican administration, that shows that it's about collaborating and making sure that we're putting our community first. And that is exactly what I know how to do. And I am very excited to bring that to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. And Lisa, your final question. And let's start with Ms. Cardenas first.
Thank you. Do you support any type of tax or business fee increases in the wake of COVID pandemic?
I don't think we should be furthering harming our small businesses. I know that, as I said earlier, things such as Prop 15 would not actually hurt our small businesses. That is actually incorrect information. Our small businesses might actually benefit from a situation like this. I think we need to be working collaboratively with our small business community to ensure that they are able to thrive and not close down during this pandemic, which has been devastating for so many of our small businesses that are providing a lot of the local jobs in our community. So that's something that I will always make sure that we're putting the needs of our small business community at the forefront, because in Chula Vista, that is the backbone of who we are. And so again, I don't believe that we need to be increasing anything for them. We need to be supporting them, offering them assistance through state and federal grants and money that we can be bringing into our city.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. And Mr. Diaz, the same question.
All right, so I would not impose any kind of fees. As a matter of fact, let's talk about Prop 15. Prop 15 is a pass-through fee. As a matter of fact, if you look at triple net, and if anyone that has any experience with businesses knows that in those leases, triple net, you will pay property tax. So who's really paying the property tax? Again, and so I've been a champion of fighting against fees. So if you look at our ADUs, where those are the granny flats, the accessory dwelling units, I had constituents in my district that fight hard and work hard for their money that were being given fees of $26,000 to put their 400 or 500 square foot granny flats. I fought very, very hard to reduce those. I was able to reduce those fees by $13,000. That was a Mike Diaz venture. Also, the other thing that I fought for was during COVID, the businesses that put their, like the gyms that put their businesses at the parks and in the city parks, the city wanted to charge them $25 an hour, which was costing some of these folks $1,500 an hour a month. I fought for that and got those fees totally wiped out.
And thank you, Mr. Diaz. And thank you, Lisa Cohen, Chamber of Commerce, for those excellent questions. We will now shift to our students from High Tech High Chula Vista and South Bay Youth for Change, Montse Urbina and Parisa Vega. And Montse, I will have you direct the first question of your 4 questions from the students. Let's start with the incumbent, Mr. Diaz, first for that first question.
How will you work to continue protecting youth from access to marijuana in both West and East Chula Vista?
Well, the first thing I'm not going to do is open it up like my opponent said. If you go look at the Cannabis Professionals Association YouTube videos, you'll see where she says, let's open it wide open. I'm not going to do that. As a matter of fact, I'm the one that fought to close these. And in a press release that just happened a few weeks ago, the city attorney said that Mike Diaz was a champion of getting the right resources at the city to close those down. The San Diego District Attorney said Mike Diaz was a turning point in her decision to bring resources, needed resources to Chula Vista. In April, we had 17 illegal pot shops in my district. Today, we have 0. We cannot allow my opponent to get in, or it's going to be the wild, wild west again. And I also, during the entire development of our ordinance, asked over and over and over again, but my council members never allowed me to pass that through, was to create an impact study where we could determine the needs for education, prevention, and enforcement costs through the Measure Q to make sure that our kids are protected in our communities. My opponent's not going to allow that to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. And Ms. Cardenas, your response to this question?
Absolutely. First of all, I don't know where Councilmember Diaz got the idea that I want to open up a pot shop in every corner, because that's false, and anybody can look that up. But what I do believe is that the lack of support from Councilmember Diaz in actually allowing us to have legal dispensaries open up in our city has caused a lot of harm in our community, specifically District 4, because when you have a market that is unregulated by our city, then that opens it up for anybody to have access to it, because it's a black market. There's no regulations, there's no rules on signage, there's no rules on how far or close it can be from schools. We absolutely need to allow for legal dispensaries to be operational in our city. And because of the hurdles that have been created by the District 4 representative, we haven't been able to do that. And what happens once we have these legal dispensaries is that these dispensaries are heavily regulated. They are made sure that they're not close to or give access to young people, because young people should not have access to cannabis in any form unless there's medical need or anything like that, but we need to allow for us to be regularly, properly these dispensaries. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Parisa, I will now turn to you for the second question, and please direct that question first to Ms. Cardenas.
How have you responded to the COVID-19 pandemic? Please share how you will make sure regulations are enforced, like mandatory masks, and your thoughts about schools opening for in-classroom teaching and learning.
This question has been asked before, and I think it's important to note our district, District 4, has been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's something that has continued to not only add a burden in our families, but killed people in our community, which is unacceptable. Since this started, I actually had COVID-19 and understand a lot of what that means to not only someone who's experiencing it, but their family. And so I made sure that I folded over into any support role that I could to ensure that we were providing COVID-19 kits, that we were making assistance calls to not only our seniors, but all of our Spanish-speaking families that were not receiving the proper information. The city has now done a great job in providing some of those that information, but it's critical and it's crucial that we continue to demand from our residents, although it's hard, that we stay safe, that we practice social distancing, that we wear a mask, because if not, it's just going to continue to kill people in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Mr. Diaz, your response to the question.
Yeah, I've worked very, very hard to deal with COVID, and just I know that with a minute you can't really even address this big issue, but I believe that, and I'm just going to go down through some of the things that I've done. My office has contacted over 700 seniors during this whole mess. We've invested millions of dollars to assist residents and businesses. I pushed for 2,000 Wi-Fi spots so that our underrepresented communities can have access to information. We ensured that we use every type of communication media to educate the public. I went out and spoke out in communities. And as your council member, I voted to support the following: the eviction moratoriums, business social distancing ordinance, 3rd Avenue recovery plan, emergency face covering order, tenant assistance, which is $1.5 million, non-essential business plan, bridge shelter, eviction moratorium, second time, CARES Act of $4.9 million, second eviction moratorium, and the list goes on and on and on and on of all that I've done. And that's why you need to elect me as your council member.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Now we'll go to the third question out of 4 from the students. And Monse, please direct your question first to Mr. Diaz.
How will you address police brutality and police reform?
So I was a union president for our firefighters. I was a firefighter for 30 years, and I was in leadership position for 15 of that. And I've always felt that folks in public safety always have to be held to a higher level of discipline. And there are times when I, as a union president, worked with our staff to fire folks, actually fire people that were not doing their job correctly. And so I believe that discipline is critical in public safety. It's our job to earn the trust of the community. And I did that working with the California State Firefighters Association, working around the state. And I continue to do that. I think we have an awesome police force. And so the goal is where we find issues, let's find out if it's a training issue. If it's a training issue, we train them. If not, we discipline.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Ms. Cardenas.
Hi, well, I want to, begin this question by saying that I absolutely believe that Black Lives Matter. And I think that the way that we need to address the situation is by understanding the complexity of it. This is many layers, right? We have crimes in our community, like, homicide and domestic violence. We have a mental health care crisis, which needs to be addressed because people don't have access to services. We have a homelessness crisis of people that don't have a place to call their home. And finally, we have the realities of systemic and racial inequities that are a part of a lot of our institutions that we need to really tackle. And all of these things have to be tackled at the same time, and with understanding that without one, we still have the rest. And so everything is being amplified during this situation, and we need to do a real assessment of how we're funding resources and allocation to ensure that all of these things are being taken care of.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Now we go to the fourth and final question from our students. Parisa, I will have you throw out that question. Please start with Ms. Cardenas.
What can you do as a city council member to help families find financial support during the pandemic and make housing more affordable in Chula Vista?
Thank you so much for that question. As I stated earlier, a lot of my experience and background comes from connecting our communities to resources, right? There's a lot of people doing really good work in our communities in the form of nonprofits. There's a lot of resources that are being given that we don't actually connect our communities to. Rental assistance and assistance to people who own their homes. Those things are so crucially important. And the fact of the matter is that while they exist, the people in my community in District 4 have a lack of access or understanding on how to access that. So creating streamlining the opportunities for our communities is critical. We can't just expect them to find the answers. We can't expect anyone to find the answers when our communities are struggling to make ends meet. They're struggling to figure out whether or not they're going to have money to pay the rent. We need to advocate, and we need to go out to our communities, meet our communities where they're at, to ensure that they are having access in the most efficient and simple way to the resources that can help them.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Mr. Diaz.
Okay, so the way that I have dealt with that is, first of all, keep in mind that as a council member, I have provided over $1.5 million in rental assistance to South Bay Community Services, who happens to be one of my favorite nonprofits. We've provided tenant assistance. One of the other things that are huge that I have been able to provide our community is emergency bridge shelter for the homeless. And no one has touched that here in years. And for as long as I can remember, I decided to take that head on, and we've got the money and the facilities and a partner for that. I also have worked with passing the eviction moratorium 3 different times. And for those, I know they had a case earlier today, somebody was talking about in the first section where they had an issue. I've also created a neighborhood protection unit where we can have our city attorney deal with issues like that, where they cannot find help from maybe the county or other resources. So now we're dealing with that right here in-house.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. That concludes our questions from students from South Bay Youth for Change and High Tech High Chula Vista. Some excellent questions tonight. We will now move on to the questions, 6 questions from the audience that were submitted in advance, and we will continue to have our students ask those questions. Montse, we will have you start with that first question to Councilmember Diaz.
How will you ensure us that the new Chula Vista Bayfront project will hire local residents?
So one of the things that we have done is well, we didn't do it actually. It was the developer. They have agreed to a PLA, which is going to provide good paying union jobs, and those jobs will come from a pool of people here in the South Bay region. And so again, that's going to provide about 7,000 jobs during the construction cycle and about 2,000 permanent jobs after the construction. But keep in mind also that the Bayfront is going to provide over $1 billion of economic activity to the South Bay region, which is going to infuse a lot of money for investors and entrepreneurs in this side of town to provide services for the hotel or other different projects. And right now in my district, we are already seeing that, and I'm working with many developers to bring some neat projects here to West Chula Vista and those jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Ms. Cardenas?
I think, what Councilmember Diaz said is true. We did agree to a PLA with our labor unions and with the developers that are constructing our Bayfront, which is great. I think in addition to that, we need to make sure that the businesses that we're bringing into the Bayfront are local businesses that are going to be hiring locally. And the way to do that is by reaching out to a lot of these businesses, small businesses, larger businesses, and having that conversation with them about what it is that we can do to ensure that they want to come to Chula Vista, that they want to stay here, because setting up businesses for failure is absolutely wrong. And we need to have an understanding of what it is that our community is looking for, and the things that are culturally relative to our district and to the city of Chula Vista, to ensure that the businesses that are coming here and hiring locally are set up to succeed rather than fail.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Now we have our second question from the audience tonight. Parisa, will you please pose that question first to Ms. Cardenas?
Residents are being evicted even though there is a ban on eviction. What will you do to prevent us from being on the streets?
That's a really important question. And I think the part that has been left out is the understanding that, I'm a renter. I rent a granny flat, and I understand that my rent goes to pay for the older couple that whose granny flat they own. It's how they live. It's their day-to-day money. And so when we're looking at eviction moratoriums, and when we're looking at ways in order to facilitate and help both the landlords and our renters, we need to look at it from both sides. We need to understand that we also need to have protections and support for landlords that in our city, we don't see a lot of people who own multiple properties that are renting them out. It tends to come down to people who have granny flats, or they have their one small apartment that they're trying to rent out. And so we need to, because what's happening after the eviction moratorium is people are going to have to pay up all of the fees that they have accumulated. So we also need to be prepared to help with those resources to our renters, because it's not fair that neither one of them should be left without assistance.
And Councilmember Diaz?
I'm sorry. So I will continue doing the hard work that I have done to help these folks. One of the things that I've done, and this was a Mike Diaz thing, was creating a neighborhood protection unit where we have a prosecutor down in the city that can deal with those quality of life issues. And this could be one of those items. Right now, we're actually working with our attorney on another quality of life issue that we have never, ever been able to deal with in the city. And now when we have that unit, we're actually now able to improve the quality of life of the people in Chula Vista. I will continue to do that. We have put in over $1.5 million in assistance. I see this council member pushing for more assistance, working with our nonprofits to provide other services, whether it's tutoring, whether it's after school programs like we're doing right now. I just worked to open up a Lauterbach Park where we can have nonprofits working with our kids and making sure that our families are safe, have a safe place to go after schools, and take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. We'll start with our third question now from the audience. And Montse, will you please pose that question first to Mr. Diaz?
What resources would you provide for veterans?
For pardon?
What resources would you provide for veterans?
For veterans, okay. So I'm a very veteran-friendly council member. I hired a 20-year veteran that just came out of the military when I was elected to city council. I have been, right now, as a matter of fact, we've been working with staff, and I think we may have been at one of the council meetings, or maybe it was with the city manager. We've had several projects lately where I have questioned why a veteran-owned business did not get that. It's called a VBDE. And so right now we're working to make sure that we get more veterans those small jobs. And so one of the things that our development services department is doing is they are going to change, and you'll see this soon on the business licenses. We are actually going to put a check mark where we can identify whether it's a woman-owned business, minority, or a veteran. And so when we start providing and giving and handing out contracts, that we can give them to those folks and allow them the first bite at the apple.
And Ms. Cardenas?
So I think it's critical to connect our veteran community with the services that they need. As a city, our responsibility is to be able to provide resources for everyone in our community. Specifically with our veteran community, I think it's incredibly important for us to have a strong partnership with not only providers, but our county, to make sure that we have access to healthcare and housing and all of these things that are critical to our veteran community, that they should not be left out of the equation. They need to be brought into the fold, and making sure that we are taking care of them and offering them the support and the resources they need, whether that be housing or health services. We need to make sure that we are doing that. We're creating jobs and opportunities and prioritizing access to these things for them as well.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Now we move to our fourth question from the audience. And Parisa, will have you pose that question first to Ms. Cardenas.
What more can the city do to help immigrants?
That's a great question. You know, I'm a child of immigrants, and I think first of all, we need to all be in agreement that Chula Vista is a welcoming city. That's not something that happened in the council when this came up. Actually, Councilmember Diaz was against that. And so in order for our immigrants to thrive and feel safe and secure in our community, they need to know that we want them here. Immigrants are hardworking. Immigrants are, you know, I see it with my parents, I see it with my family, and we need to be able to support them and offering them, again, in a way that's culturally competent and relevant to them. There's so many times that opportunities are not available for them because they don't understand. We don't understand how to hack the system or how to be a part of the system. And so education is incredibly important. Access to all of these things that everybody needs. They care about education, they care about housing. All of these things are incredibly important to our immigrant community, and we need to be able to provide those resources to them in a way that makes sense.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Councilmember Diaz.
So I was born in Mexico. My mother was born in Mexico. My brothers were born in Mexico. My sister was born in Mexico. My grandparents were all born in Mexico. And I am an immigrant. I think I'm the only immigrant that's running for city council. And so what do we do? Let me tell you how I define welcoming. When I was teaching at Sweetwater, I had a student that whose parents were deported. And he was a great student, and he wanted to be a firefighter. And so my wife and I decided to welcome him into our family. How many people do that? Think about that. How many people would take a high school kid, a boy, by the way, into their homes? And he lived with us for 3 years. Today, he's at a local fire department. I can't say which one. He's already in week 12 of a 16-week academy, and he's going to be a firefighter here on November 13th. That is welcoming, and that is what true
Thank you, Mr.
leadership
Diaz.
is and what real people do that have a loving heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. We now move to our fifth question from the audience, and Montse will ask that question to Mr. Diaz.
Broadway has several vacant businesses that are constantly being vandalized. What will you do to fill these vacancies with lucrative businesses that will benefit the community?
So that is a great question, and one that I've been working on to deal with here at the city of Chula Vista. And the problem is our permitting, our tenant improvement process. When somebody wants to do an improvement, we had a horrible system. Since I've been elected, we've have been transitioning to a total online system. Like I said, I've been working on reducing fees. I'm going to keep fighting to reduce fees and to make this a very business-friendly city. Regulation is one of those things that just kills jobs and entrepreneurship. Going back again, we had businesses in COVID who were being charged $25 an hour to use our city parks. I got rid of that. We also used CARES money to help our businesses as well, and actually went out and visited local businesses to recruit them to use some of our benefits. So it's about just being business friendly to the business community.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Ms. Cardenas?
You know, Southwest Chula Vista is actually prime real estate for redevelopment. If you drive down Main Street, you see all of these abandoned warehouses that have been abandoned for many years. And the reality is that we're not doing a good enough job. We're not putting ourselves out there and having conversations with so many businesses that should be attracted to Chula Vista. You know, I have a background in binational affairs, and I mean, Chula Vista is the center of our binational region. Why are we not going and actively going into Tijuana or Ensenada or Mexicali and having this collaborative conversations to ensure that we are bringing small businesses into our community? Why don't we have a department in the city of Chula Vista that's just about economic development and revitalization? We don't do that. We don't put enough emphasis with that. So, or to that. So I think it's crucial that we have those tough conversations and make sure that we make Chula Vista a welcoming place for our small businesses as well.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. This brings us to our final of the 6 questions from the audience. And Prisa, we will have you pose that question first to Ms. Cardenas.
When you hear about something that concerns you in the city, what steps would you take to see that this concern is resolved?
Thank you for that question, Parisa. I think this is at the bottom of what leadership is like. When you have an issue or a concern, whether it's a small thing like a street light or a sidewalk, or a bigger thing, right? Like the economic crisis we're all dealing with because of COVID-19. What you need to do is have a conversation with the people that are impacted and the people that are active stakeholders in the situation. We need to make sure that everyone is at the table when we're making these decisions. We need to be extremely transparent about the fact that, you know, whether or not there's opposing sides on a table, we need to come into an agreement that's going to benefit our community at large. The bottom line for anything that we do in city council has to be the wellness of our community. And I think that is something that has been lacking. I think that picking up the phone call and making sure that we are talking to a few people, but not everyone, is not enough. We truly need to make sure that everyone has input on how our city is managed, because I'm a council member, but everybody is the resident, right? The residents are the people we're trying to be there for. And so that's critically important.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Mr. Diaz.
All right, repeat the question, please.
When you hear about something that concerns you in the city, what steps would you take to see that this concern is resolved?
Well, that's one of the things that I really am proud about what we do in my office. First of all, every council office has different gifts and they operate differently, because we, just like us, we are all different. In my office, I pride ourselves in the fact that we handle all of our constituent issues mano a mano. We are there in the trenches. I'm not a gambler, but I'm willing to gamble dollars to donuts that if we take everybody's at Chula Vista and see how many reports that they put in at Chula Vista, that if you put my office's at Chula Vistas against everybody else at City Hall, in the mayor's in council offices, we'll probably have 10 times combined of all of those people. And so I'm proud of the fact that we are out there. We actually drive the district for 3 hours every morning before we even step into the office. And that's why we have so many different reports. We are out there in the trenches, and I'm proud to say that we are out there in the front yards of our communities to help them out.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. That concludes our portion of the questions from the students from High Tech High and South Bay Youth for Change, and then the questions from our audience. Excellent questions, and we thank you for being with us tonight. We are now at the portion of the forum for closing statements, and since we began with you, Ms. Cardenas, for opening statements, we will have Councilmember Diaz start with closing statements. So remind you, Mr. Cardenas or Mr. Diaz, you have 2 minutes, and then we will shift to Ms. Cardenas for 2 minutes for her closing statements.
Thank you. Let me just get my timer going here just so I don't go crazy here. So again, I'm Councilmember Mike Diaz, retired firefighter. I grew up in Chula Vista. I moved to Chula Vista when I was like, I don't know, 2-3 years old. Was born in Mexico, became a U.S. citizen, married my high school sweetheart, had 2 kids, 4 grandkids. As a matter of fact, my daughter and grandkids live just 3 houses down from me. I'm a very, very close family man. This Chula Vista has been my home for many, 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 many years, and my families and my daughters and my grandkids. And so when in 2016, I never planned on running. I was actually asked to run. And over those 4 years, we have done so much in West Chula Vista. We have repaved over 8 miles of streets, put in over 12,000 feet of new sidewalk. We've got two new fire stations going up. We've actually, before I got elected, we weren't meeting our police or fire response times. Today, we are meeting our fire response times. I believe that by the first part of next year, or maybe mid part, we will actually be meeting our police response times, which we haven't met in 11 years. Everyone that's ever wanted your vote for the last 40 years told you that they were going to get the Bayfront done. We're getting the Bayfront done. That's going to bring over 7,000 jobs, good paying jobs to West Chula Vista. Our parks, Lauterbach Park. Those of you that live in Chula Vista, when's the last time you've seen the Lauterbach Rec Center open? As soon as it became available, my office jumped on that facility, and now we have a partner nonprofit who's going to open it up and provide a youth drop-off, character building, tutoring, all sorts of different services. And so this council member has shown true leadership, has really brought back all those things, and now we are getting more attention than East Lake or Otay Ranch. Vote for Mike Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Ms. Cardenas, 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I really just want to thank you all for finding a way to make this forum happen, even though this pandemic that has continued to disproportionately affect our district has made things very hard. I want to give a special thanks to every one of the students that participated here today, creating these excellent questions. I know that you get told a lot that you're the future, but I want to assure you that you're the now. You're the leaders of our community and in your homes. And I truly want to applaud you for that. I feel identified with a lot of you all. But finally, I'm really grateful to count on the support of our mayor, Mary Casillas, and Councilmember Padilla, and many local leaders and residents. I'm proud to now have the opportunity to represent my community. You keep hearing from the council member about the council member, and I would just want to make sure that the conversation is about us, the community, the residents of District 4, the people that need support the most. While the council member keeps saying that I'm 4 years too late, I have to disagree, because even after 4 years of his leadership, our district is still lacking strong representation and continues to struggle to be afforded the same opportunities as the rest of our city. I want to thank you all again for your time and for this opportunity, and I hope I can count on your support before November 3rd, because we can all vote by mail now. So thank you all so much. And again, this was great and a great opportunity.
And I want to thank District 3 and District 4 candidates for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you again, South Bay Youth for Change, High Tech High, Chula Vista, and Lisa Cohen with the Chamber of Commerce for being with us. We hope you found tonight's candidate forum useful. Thanks to our candidates again for participating, the students for asking those questions, and to you, the citizens of Chula Vista, for answering or providing those questions and being with us tonight. Now, don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November 3rd in person at your local polling place. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or you can vote early by mail. If you have any questions about voting, you can contact the Registrar of Voters here in San Diego County at sdvote.com. Again, that is sdvote.com. Thank you and good night.